This is a HeadGum podcast.
Hello, hello. This is Fake the Nation, where we talk about news, we talk about culture, and where we recover from a failed attempt at baking cookies during Cookie Week. I'm your host, Negin Farsad, and I don't know, I thought the New York Times is doing Cookie Week. There's like a local Cookie Week happening. I was like, let me get in on this holiday tradition with the gluten-free chocolate chip recipe. And it was largely a failure, as in I was a failure. So today, we're not going to talk about my crumbly humiliation, but we will talk about our national humiliation, Trump, and his interview with Kristen Welker. We'll also talk about the United Healthcare C.E.O. shooting, about splitting the G, and finally, the succession saga of the Murdochs. Today's panel is so fabulous. Folks, you have heard him on the show before. He is a beloved podcaster and comedian and just general talker. He just had a TED Talk come out that's so fantastic. You should look it up. Like I said, he's a comedian, he's a writer, he's host of the live show Wrong Answers Only, where comedians interview a scientist and make science fun. I had the great pleasure of doing this show in Washington, D.C. just recently, and oh my God, we had such a fantastic time. And it was a little bit of a Fake the Nation panelist reunion, if we're honest, because everyone on the show had also been Fake the Nation. Not intentional. Chris, just Fake the Nation just is on the subconscious of the one and only Chris Duffy. Hey, Chris.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. And also, I want to say, I would absolutely buy a cookbook written by you called My Crumbly Humiliation. That's a great idea. You got to get that out there.
You know what? I'm not even like celiac or anything, but like gluten just hurts my tummy. What are you going to do? And so I'm trying to like be innovative in my own kitchen, in which I do next to nothing. So for me to take these bold steps is kind of ridiculous. All right. We're also joined by acclaimed political commentator. She's a former TV host and host of the podcast Off the Cupp. She's also part of iHeartMedia's political podcast, Reasoned Choice Media. And she's just fabulous. I've seen her for so many years. I've always wanted to talk to her. And here she is. It's the excellent S.E. Cupp. Hey, S.E.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, before we get into it, I just want to remind listeners to join the Patreon, where you can support the show. And I know a lot of people are asking for money right now at this time of year. And let me be another annoying one of them. But the good news is that for your subscription on the Patreon, you get bonuses of the show. So go to patreon.com/Negin Farsad. And in the regular feed this week, you're also getting a bonus. It's a Godfather trilogy mini-series. We are discussing every aspect of these historic films. Well, two of them were widely celebrated and the third is widely reviled. But we get into all of it. And we just released episode 1 on Monday about the first Godfather. And I have to mention, we come at it from the perspective of there's like, diehard lovers of the franchise in the panel, but there's also me, who had never seen any of the movies. So that is the lens by which I come at the Godfather recap trilogy here at Fake the Nation. So dig into that. It's a really good time. It's also really fun for the holidays because it has nothing to do with anything really. All right. Now, on to the show with topic number 1. A new trend has swept the internet, and that is splitting the G. Now, this is what it is. It's splitting the G refers to the practice of taking a big enough swig of your pint, that first swig, that after the swig, your foam meets the midway point of the G on the Guinness logo of your pint. Now, it's both fun and it's ridiculous, and it makes soulless influencers drunken soulless influencers. I don't know. Have either of you split the G?
No. I don't drink anymore, so I have not split the G in years. But I love that it is it's like a really cute term for just chugging a lot of alcohol at once. It also sounds like it could equally be something you'd be diagnosed by at a urologist's office. I'm sorry that you've split the G.
I don't.
Yeah.
What's the fun? What is the fun of it? What makes that
What is
fun?
the fun of it?
I don't.
Just like your
Precision.
ability. Yeah.
It's just like a dumb drinking game.
Yeah.
But it's not even a game. It's just, can you take a
Yeah, it's
perfectly
like a
sized first sip?
self-challenge.
Exactly. It's a self-challenge. Exactly.
I don't want to work when I'm drinking. I don't want jobs. I don't want tasks. Why would I bother myself? The whole point of drinking is to not think about stuff. Why am I giving myself a job?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
No.
It's a great question.
It's a great example of like someone has a lot more talent at social media than I do, and they work for Guinness, that they were like, everyone, there's this hot new trend. It's called drinking Guinness, but we gave it a name. And now like bars are running out of Guinness because they came up with a cool name.
Yeah, it's funny because they're really running out of Guinness. In the UK, they're like at 10% of the amount that they normally have for the bars.
The Guinness strategic reserves are running low.
Exactly. It's actually there's it's only apparently craft beer is taking a big hit because now everybody wants to drink Guinness. And so I'm sorry, craft beer.
Can we, as Americans, can we have their problems? Can we switch?
Absolutely.
Can we switch problems? Like that sounds like things are going okay over there.
But this is in America too. Like a craft beer was a big American phenomenon and taking over, the beer scene. And now Americans are drinking Guinness. Apparently, there's like a window into people like Paul Mescal and Sally Rooney and just like a cooler version of Ireland. And that's what Splitting the G represents.
It's funny that we've decided that a cooler version of Ireland is like the one massive corporation, right? Like a one multinational corporation. We're like, that's the coolest part of Ireland. A country famous for its small farms and high quality dairy and bread. And we're like, but what if an international beverage conglomerate had a cool marketing challenge? That's the fun part of Ireland.
Did you guys know? I didn't know that it's not actually a really high caloric drink. It's 4.2% alcohol by volume, which is like a Bud Light. And it's only got 125 calories per 12 ounces, which is lighter than Modelo Especial. So
that's
there
surprising
you go.
Because it tastes like a pudding.
It's very heavy. Yeah.
It feels like a gut. It feels like my gluten-free fucking cookies in your gut. Is what it feels like. Last thing I'm going to say about this, there's
pudding.
So gross. More people are drinking non-alcoholic beer, so sales of the zero alcohol Guinness are really strong. In addition, so it's not just that like I guess you could split the G in both type, in non-alcoholic and alcoholic.
Nothing more humiliating than me, almost 40 years old, saying, "Can I split the G on my non-alcoholic Guinness, please?" I saw a trend on the TikTok. I'm trying to split the G, but I can't have alcohol. Would it be possible to have one of your 0% alcohol pints?
Can I tell you something really weird, which is that I happen to know a photographer for the New York Times. Don't worry about it. I'm really cool. And I ran into him one day at the coffee shop, and I was like, "Oh, what are you up to today?" And he's like, "I gotta go take photos of splitting the G." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" So I heard about this a good 2 weeks before other civilians, because my friend was taking photos, and he explained it to me, and I was like, that feels really heinous. And once it's published in the Times, it's over.
Negin, I also just want to say, before I did any research about this, because you told us we were going to talk about this, if you had told me just going in blind that splitting the G was Trump's version of the Manhattan Project, I would have believed you 100%. It just sounds like that. That has the vibe of it.
Totally. Because it's like an atom and completely.
I don't know. We're going to split the G.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to another element in culture. Last week, we talked about the Oxford Dictionary Word of the Year, which was brain rot. And this year, we're talking about the Pantone Color of the Year. That entire sentence in itself is an example of brain rot. This year's color is, drum roll please, mocha mousse. Is this year's color. Now, if you're trying to picture it, it looks a little bit like dirt. And what does this basically dressed up poop color say about the year 2024?
To me,
I think
Pantone.
It's too kind. It's like it's too nice.
Oh,
I mean, that's mocha mousse is putting a very nice spin on the year. That sounds delicious. I love my browns. I love my neutrals. No, I would need darker, like asphalt.
I thought you were just going to say like ass, like
ass,
the color.
Ass would work.
Pantone color of the year,
Like
ass.
That, I think we just did it, guys. I think we just did it. Pantone color of the year should be ass. But I was going to say like asphalt with like some dirt in it, with some like chewed up chewing gum. Like that's the color we should be going for this year.
Yeah.
Not mocha mousse. That sounds
which is
delicious.
also the color of the New York City sky today, as we have a terrible weather day. One thing that I thought was interesting about this is that brat green, which I think everyone suspected was going to be the color of the year, did not make it. But I do want to say, as like a person who I appreciate and love fashion, and I walk into the stores, not necessarily even buying anything, just to see what's up. And there is no color. Like all of the racks were basically this mocha mousse, or ass. Actually, our new color of the year. I saw a lot of that on the racks. And so it's funny. Brat green was almost like an aberration for the year.
Yeah, it almost feels to me a little bit like Pantone, like the creative people at Pantone got a phone call from the warehouse and they were like, we got to move this brown paint. Can you help us out? we are going to go out of business if we don't sell brown. Can you please make this happen?
Absolutely.
It's weird because there's such a trend in interior design for blue kitchens, green kitchens, these pops of color. People are really rejecting this like white cookie cutter house, the gray walls. So it's weird. It's an odd choice for Pantone for a number of reasons. But yeah, maybe they just had to move the paint.
It is the first time they ever picked a brown though. So
I was just about to say.
We're moving forward in any color can be color of
progress.
Progress.
Yeah, progress. A first. All right, folks. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we shall continue. And we are back, and we're ready for topic number 2. This weekend, Trump gave a meandering interview on Meet the Press where he kept trying to make Kristen Welker praise him for giving her the first post-election interview, which is sort of like giving someone a gift, but being like, tell me how much you love my gift. It was really awkward. Anyways, I listened to the whole thing because I'm a Fake the Nation martyr. But I did listen to it on 1.5 speed so I could just get through it. It was over an hour. And the net effect for me was confusion. I can say more about that, but I just wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, Essie, you're an incredible political commentator and voice on all of these things. What did you think of this interview?
I thought it was a great interview from her side. I thought she did a great job, and she did a great job.
I love that you started with the only like positive thing you could say.
Well,
very performance evaluation from your boss. Yeah.
Kristen did yeoman's work.
One thing I want to say about your work this year is you showed up. Now
You came? Yeah, you were there. No, listen, it's very hard to pin down Trump. We've all been there. And it was super hard over the course of the campaign. And surprise, not any easier. Now that he's won, he doesn't suddenly have answers to very complicated questions about what he's going to do about the economy, immigration, crime, etc. Still just concepts. But the thing that seemed off to me, and this is not new, I covered this election in a swing state in Pennsylvania this year. I did something a little different. I went out to a swing state and I just talked to voters for 6 months. And so talking to voters instead of covering it from like a cable news desk in New York or Washington is a little different. And for 6 months, I heard them tell me what they wanted. And it was economy, crime, and immigration. So the stuff that he talks about doing that no voters, even his own, asked for, the retribution. No one told me they were voting for Trump to get revenge.
Retribution. Yeah.
No one said they were voting for Trump to pardon the Jan 6th insurrectionists. No one voted for tariffs. Like the stuff that he was pushing a lot in that interview and that Kristen was asking about isn't what he was sent to do. They just want to be able to afford more stuff. They want the borders closed and they want to feel safer in their towns. So there's all this other stuff that Trump constantly throws in there because it matters to him. And maybe it matters to like Marjorie Taylor Greene, but it doesn't really matter to his voters. And I'm wondering when they're going to get what they signed up for, if ever.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, because I did a bunch of listeners know I did a bunch of videos from MoveOn.org where I would go out and talk to people in swing states, and nobody talked about retribution. In fact, they said that when I asked about stuff like that, they would say that's all theatrics. He doesn't mean it.
Yeah, exactly. That's not what they came for.
And he did for one brief moment say something that I thought was relevant to the citizenry. He said he claimed he won because of the border, which is, I think that's definitely one of the reasons, and because, quote, groceries, simple word, groceries. Who uses that word? And then so he basically congratulated himself for using this just extremely obscure word of groceries. And that's how he won the election, because he unearthed this word that no one had ever heard of. It was a very, I wish, unearth this clip because it's absolutely ridiculous. But that was the one moment that I was like, well, that is correct. You did talk about groceries. In fact, you were in a grocery store. There was a table with groceries at one point. You did groceries.
Negin,
so that I think was right.
Just to help me out, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but can you actually, I am not familiar with that. What are groceries? What does that mean?
And be specific.
That word for me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fucking Chris Elon Musk Duffy over here is familiar. Well, on the like retribution part, this is what was confusing to me. Now, I don't know, like, Chris, if you heard this part of the interview, but it was like he was asked, are you going to open investigations onto the Biden family? And he was just like, no, I mean, I'm not going to, success will be my retribution. He said that multiple times. Success will be my retribution. And then he said, well, are you going to ask Pam Bondi and Kash Patel to do it? And he was like, well, I'm not going to tell them what to do. They're really smart. They know what to do. So it's sort of like, oh, so you are going to do an investigation, or you're not going to do?
And he said, like, I'm not going to do that unless. And then he listed a bunch of things that could definitely happen, and then he would.
Exactly. Well, so I don't know. What did you make of that, Chris?
Well, I mean, I think this is one of the things that is really interesting about, like, when you listen to him speak is that he is in so many ways like a human Rorschach test, where he says things that provide so much wiggle room that you can interpret it one way or the other. And I think it's, SE, one of the things I really admire about your coverage and your political voice is what you said, that, like, you went out and you talked to regular people. And I think that for a lot of people, Trump kind of is this, like, slate that you can just project your own ideas onto, right? Because it's like, I'm not going to do retribution, but Pam Bondi, the person I specifically picked, whatever she wants to do. And it's like, but you picked her because she's going to do retribution, right? Like, you picked Kash Patel because they've said they're going to do that. And he gets to say, like, I would never, but if the person I picked does, that's their job. But without taking responsibility for the selection process. And it's the same thing, like, when they asked him about the Dreamers, he said a bunch of times, I'm going to take care of them. But, like, take care of them could just as easily mean deport them as take care of them as in show care for them. So I think he has this way of, he has this very unique slipperiness that is certainly a political strength for him. And I think it really comes out when he talks about these things that he knows are controversial.
I think you're right. And the thing I almost envy his voters. I'm not talking about, like, the MAGA rally, the Nelk Boys, crowd, just regular voters who voted for him because of the things we discussed. I really envy them because they can tune out the stuff that's repulsive to me, that would, as a conservative, that I could never say is okay, that I could never vote for. They can tune it out. Like, I didn't meet a single voter who talked about migrants eating pets. They did. It didn't penetrate them, or they didn't care. They completely tune out so much of the garbage and nonsense, not to mention like the racism, the bigotry, the sexism, the rape, all the stuff that is so repulsive to me. They can tune it out, because like what is actually impacting their lives is not the fact that he was adjudicated to have raped a person. What's actually impacting their lives, if you ask them, crime, the economy, and immigration. And I have the luxury of caring about things like democracy, right? My bills are paid, my town is safe. I get that that is a luxury to care about those things. But they can be very sort of cafeteria Trump voters. You know, they'll take a little of this and leave a little of this behind.
No, I swear I'm not trying to, I really am not trying to put like a false equivalence here at all. But I do just in myself feel that I do some of that like tuning out as well, right? Like when Kamala Harris says we're going to have the most lethal US military in the world, I could be like, she probably believes in peace. You know, it's probably more peaceful it's probably lethal, but they don't do the lethal stuff, right? Because I don't necessarily want that part, and I can tune that out too. I'm not trying to say that the two are the same, but I just recognize that like some element in our system of voting for anyone is that you have to be able to be like, maybe they don't believe the things that they're saying.
Right. Some element of the system is that you have to take the good with the bad, because no candidate is going to perfectly represent you unless they're Elizabeth Warren, in which they perfectly represented me. But anyways, there is
like,
a take a good with the bad.
Candidates that I thought perfectly represented, you know, the conservative movement or whatever mattered to me. I thought there were, but they're long gone. Like there haven't been in a very long time.
Exactly. We're talking about erstwhile peeps here.
Yeah.
One of the things you talked about that I wanted to take some time on is the ending birthright citizenship, which is in the Constitution. And full disclosure, it's the kind of citizenship I have. What? And so I asked my...
meaning you were born here.
I was born here.
Yeah. Meaning you were born here. Right. Okay.
Immigrant parents.
Right.
Yeah. I was just born here. A little fucking dirty Iranian from a shithole country, just born here. And that's what it's gonna say. That's what it said in my birth announcement. So Essie, that is, what is that? How does that plan sound to you?
Well, that's another thing that like never came up. I must have interviewed hundreds of voters. Like not one said he's got to end birthright citizenship. That's why I'm going to the ballots. That's why I'm going to the polls. It never came up. I don't know who this is for. It's just sort of like a virtue or vice signal to, you know, his rabid, bigoted wing of his fandom. And they're not all bigots, but there's a wing that really appeals to, the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, you know who I'm talking about, that really appeals to them. And I've long lamented Trump appealing to this particular cohort of voters. This is not a cohort of voters that anyone should want, but he can't do it. So it's this weird false promise to like 5 people who care about it, and the rest of his voters are like, what about my groceries?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Focus on the groceries.
And I can imagine that it appeals to some low information voters who are like, well, I don't know, I heard birthright citizenship's a big problem somehow, you know, like I can picture a low information voter being somehow like manipulated into thinking that this is the reason that their groceries are high, you know, which I think is like the connection they're always trying to make. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of, to me, I think for me, it hits at like the intersection of these two big things, which is one that like people often would rather stop one bad thing from happening by having 4 million slightly less terrible things happen. You know, like they're like, well, rather than have one shark attack, I'd rather destroy all of the fish in the water. That's like a crazy example, right? But like people have this like super sensationalized idea of someone taking advantage of the immigration system, and so then they'd rather ruin it for all the people who are doing things totally right, than have this feeling of getting taken advantage of. And relatedly, I kind of think it's connected to the CEO thing, which we're going to talk about later on, the CEO killing, which is that people just have, in my mind, a very understandable and righteous fury at the system not working, and they are directing it in totally misguided ways. And so I think like this fear of immigrants, this idea that like America is losing its culture, that we're getting diluted, that people are being pushed out, that is the wrong response to a legitimate, in my view, grievance, which is that people are not doing well and that there are people taking advantage of you. It's just not the immigrants, right? It's the people pushing the immigrant narrative. It's the rich people, not the immigrants.
Well, this is a good opportunity to segue into that United Healthcare C.E.O. shooting. Brian Thompson was actually shot last week when we were taping, so we missed this bit of news last week. And that murder, like any murder, is tragic. It's deeply horrifying. The public reaction to the murders reflected something larger about the health insurance industry. So I do want to talk about that. Now, the moment I read the headline before I knew anything, I thought, oh no, this is vengeance for a denied claim. And of course, I wasn't alone in thinking that. Where are we in sort of, I guess, I mean, it's difficult to talk about because, again, I don't want to in any way like show any sympathy for this kind of murder. But where are we in both recognizing this as the absolute worst way to deal with an issue, but also that there is an issue that needs addressing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can hold two things at the same time, right? It's like, I personally think across the board in every situation that killing is wrong. Maybe if it's in self-defense, I can see it being justifiable. But even then, probably the worst way that you could have. I get that you might have to sometimes, right? But killing is, in my view, just bad. You shouldn't kill people. I don't believe in killing. And this guy had a job that was bad. He was doing things that were bad for the world, and he was making too much money, and his job should not exist because his company should not exist. There shouldn't be a private healthcare company because there shouldn't be private healthcare insurance because they shouldn't make money off denying people their right to live freely and healthily and without pain. I think you can hold both of those things at the same time. Like, I get why people are furious at him because the system is broken. At the same time, I don't think the way to fix the system is to go around and start executing people in the streets. That's not the way I would want a new system to be developed either.
I don't think you're wrong, but I feel like the danger here is in drawing this connecting this direct line from a criminal act with a legitimate grievance about a broken, failing system. Connecting those dots is like connecting the dots between a political assassin going out and killing a politician he or she didn't like and saying, yeah, but he's got a point. I mean, no, healthy people don't go around shooting up schools or killing random strangers. There's a mental illness part of this that I think separates this completely. This was a deranged, depraved act that he planned in a sort of a frenzied mind, believing there was justice and righteousness in this act. That's deranged. There's no justice or righteousness in murdering an innocent father and person, whatever you think of the job he's doing. And we can all agree that that's a failing system. But I think there's a danger in connecting the two things that, Chris, you rightly say can be true at the same time. They are, but I don't believe we should connect them. And people giving him saying, yeah, that was bad, but he had a point. I think that is a very, very dangerous justification of something that is totally and utterly unjustifiable. It's not cool. It's not politics. It's not righteous. It was awful.
Although there's an interesting connection here between when we see a mass killing and we want to immediately talk about gun violence, and people say this is not the time to talk about gun violence, and then there becomes a question of when do we have the time to talk about gun violence. And so I think if maybe, it's like, for better or worse, this has sort of become the time to talk about health insurance,
Well, definitely for worse. For worse. It's not for better.
Yeah.
Worse.
Absolutely. Right.
For worse,
yes,
this is why we're going to talk about it.
Because this is not how we should have been starting a
Right.
conversation about health insurance. But it's like now that we're here talking about health insurance, it's like obviously, I mean, my personal opinion, I mean, I'm more probably aligned with Chris, where I'm like, where there should be a public option. Health insurance should never deny treatment that a doctor says is necessary. And we have all been, I don't know a single person who has not been denied a treatment that has been prescribed by a doctor as medically necessary. It's just constant, and you're always just fighting. Even just going to like an annual checkup that's supposed to be like a nothing situation gives me anxiety, because I feel like I'm going to get a bill in the mail, of something I don't understand that has been foisted upon me unjustly. And that, I think, is and it's an extremely complicated situation. There's costs at the base of everything that are also out of control, and we need to do something to rein in those costs. So there's like a regulatory issue there, but there's also an issue of like, why is this even something that is not like roads or education or the postal service, where we're like, no, it's a public good that actually helps create a solid tax-paying citizenry. Why don't we view health that way, instead of thinking as like, it's a privilege if you get to live or die. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's so complicated. Chris, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say in response to what what you said, I totally agree, right? That there's like there's always this huge danger if you're like, this person speaks for me, but you've never actually heard that person speak, right? People are like, the assassin is doing the right thing. And then I would guarantee, like you said, that when we hear the assassin speak, that we're going to be like, oh, but you don't actually speak for me. You are. That's not what I wanted to say. That's kind of crazy. So there's that. And then also, certainly would never invite anyone who's shooting people in the street over to my house for dinner, right? Like, that's just not, I don't want them in my home. That I do think that drawing that connection, I agree, right? Like, there's a danger in making that one-to-one. But I also think there's some legitimate question, not in the like, this person did the right thing, but of asking, like, you run a business that kills people. It just kills them slowly and over time. And your profit is based on denying medical claim. Is there, are you morally responsible? And again, I'm not saying that your punishment should be this, but I think it's the idea that people are responding and saying, like, I can't have a lot of sympathy for someone who is in a morally troubling, and that's the best thing you could say, situation where like they are representative of and making their living off hurting people. I think that is a valid complaint.
That goes back to the gun violence situation where there's been attempts at suing gun manufacturers, right? Because we're like, who is morally responsible for this situation? Yeah. And we seem to like not have anyone be responsible for it. And so there's been attempts like, okay, maybe it's the gun manufacturer. So like, again, in the same way that like a health insurance company might have blood on their hands, gun manufacturers have blood on their hands, or do they, right? Like these are all the questions that like that are on the table, I think,
And this is where it's look, empathy, I think, can and should exist on the human to human level, right? So like when you think about a person being killed, that is bad, that is wrong, and I have so much empathy for like family and for all of the people affected. That I think you should have that. I also think in the like more general hypothetical zone, right? Like CEO of bomb factory blown up by bomb, it's kind of like, yeah, you worked at the bomb factory, And I'm not saying you earned that, but it's like you work in a place that deals with death. There is there's a little bit less of an ability to like see that as like there's something wrong there. And I don't know how to articulate it in a way. And I'm not trying to advocate for violence ever, because I just believe violence is wrong. But I do think that like the solution is shutting down the systems of death, right, rather than killing people. But I do think if you work at the death factory, you should evaluate your life choices. You should think like, is this how I want to spend the one life that I've been given?
Right, but that revelation probably shouldn't come at the barrel of a gun.
Certainly,
yeah, no. And I know you're not saying that, but the giving an promoter to vigilante justice because the system is so bad and these people profit off of death, all true things, is it's, like I said, very dangerous, very slippery slope, because you could find righteous cause in it, in anything. You could say, but what about the pharmaceutical companies? I mean, there's a ton of there's an evil empire of people who are probably in terrible professions and are responsible for a lot of awful things. We have a legal system for that. We've got we've got free speech for that. And I'm not saying that solves every problem. It certainly doesn't, but neither does assassinating people.
No.
I just can't even believe people are talking in a way about this that is like, yeah, well, that's how it goes. Or like,
get on LinkedIn. Look for a new job on LinkedIn. They're posting every day. You could just go on LinkedIn recruiting and solve this problem. You don't have to work for one of these places.
Yeah. I don't like I find it really ghoulish.
I think I was thinking about like Occupy Wall Street and how like that to me is like it was a much healthier way of like bringing up this shit. Now it didn't work.
No.
Right? Like we didn't see any changes in the banking industry. But
that's why we have elections and
right. But it should change the conversation. And it's interesting because I think if you look at the results of this election, at the top of the ticket is a man who probably is fine with health insurance companies making as much money as they do, and does not see the and has concepts of a plan, for what he's going to do to fix the healthcare system, which is, by the way, nothing, fucking meaningless. He has no fucking idea. Right. And
Correct.
So it's for all the outrage we're seeing about health insurance right now, the incoming president that gives two fucks about it. So
it almost didn't come up in the election.
They
didn't even address it.
It barely came up. Yeah.
I will say also, like, I'm a comedian. I've been joking around, but like my genuine, all kidding aside, like fear is I do think that there is a real kind of a direct link between like the rage that at the system that elected Trump and the rage that is making people justify violence like this. I think that like the anger at how broken the systems are and how little social support and safety net there is, and the way that rage is getting channeled, that is what makes me scared about the next, set of years for our country, because I think people are clearly really angry and things are clearly not working, and it's scary to me how that is being channeled. I do think it's like,
I think you're so right, and I want to take some ecumenical blame, because I think in the media we fan those flames and we foment the rage on the left and the right. And we make people, the systems are broken and they're already angry at that, but we fan that flame and we get them more enraged and we tell them who to be mad at. And the right's very good at that. The left does it too, but the right's extra good at telling you who to be mad at and who to hate and who to go and tell off or whatever. I think that's been a terrible thing that the media has done, because it rates. That's why we do it, because it rates. And I hate it. I'm grossed out by it. I, years ago, kind of stopped participating in those kinds of shows and panels where it's just the screaming and the yelling and here's who to blame and here's who to get mad at. I hate it. And I hate that the business of journalism has sort of caved into that. Coarsened, basest instincts.
Wow, that was really interesting to hear you talk about. Folks, what a difficult discussion.
Sorry, was that too dark? Was that dark?
No, I thought that was amazing. I thought that was amazing. Also, it's like just very rare that you hear someone who's participated in the media, say that. And so I think it's beautiful. 'Cause I agree. You know what I mean? Yeah. And one of the like, one of the things with this podcast is like trying to kind of take the anger out of stuff. Like,
Yeah. That's what I try to do too when I go on cable news or in my podcast. Like, let's take the temperature down and let's be more responsible with how we're talking about all of these already heated issues. Can we play a more responsible role and just make people feel a little bit better?
Yeah.
And not like the world is ending, whether this thing happens or that thing happens. It's not ending. We're going to be okay. Let's come down to earth a little bit.
I love that. And now, folks, let us move on to topic number 3. Rupert Murdoch failed in his attempt to move control of his media assets to Lachlan Murdoch. So basically, he had this trust. The trust was going to give all of the media assets, including Fox News, to 4 of his children. They would control it together. And that worried him because that meant that Lachlan, who's the only right-wing person in that crew, would be outvoted, and that Fox News would eventually not be right-wing anymore. So this is just, the first step in, I think, many steps of them trying to get rid of, to fix this trust or whatever, this irrevocable trust, by the way. It's not supposed to be changed. What do you think of this succession drama?
Before we even talk about it, Negin, I got to say, I love that you're like, and here's a palate cleanser after our discussion about the cynical, profit-driven extremism of the media. Rupert Murdoch, totally new topic. The Murdoch Empire. Certainly totally irrelevant to what we were just discussing.
Yeah. The people, as he said, were really good at riling up the right. The man himself, Rupert, he's 93, by the way, still
hanging on.
Here's what's interesting to me is that cable news is also in a slow decline. Yeah. And so it's funny it's just a little funny to fight so hard for a thing that feels surely to be dying itself.
I also I totally agree with that. And I also think my first reaction to this is like, what a great day that must have been to be the judge in probate court. To be like, oh, I get to say no to Big Daddy Rupert. This is the greatest day of my normally very boring job. My whole career, I've never once been front page in the New York Times. And finally, probate court paid off. I am living the dream. That is, what a just chef's kiss moment as a probate judge.
What power. But it also seemed like very easy because it was a naked ploy to ensure that Lachlan would take over of an irrevocable trust that is designed not to be changed, And so that, I mean, it was kind of like, guys, this is an easy decision. Essie, what do you make of this secession drama?
That noise should just be the whole answer. We'll just play that on loop.
Cable news is dying. That's fact number 1. Yep. And even though it's happening more slowly at Fox than at other networks, it's still happening. And I think that point that they're fighting so hard to keep a political bent at a place that will probably look very different in 2-3 years, just by virtue of the fact that cable news is going away. It is going away. It will not come back. It's not going to survive this. Is weird and kind of sad. When I think about Rupert Murdoch at 93, trying to keep his legacy alive through his son's politics. It's just so sad. Like, dude, get a hobby, retire.
Do some stamp collecting or whatever.
When you look at him or Dick Van Dyke and the frolicking that Dick Van Dyke is up to in his later years, doing videos with Coldplay, you're like, who is winning in this situation and who is losing in this situation? This is not how I would ever want to spend the end of my life as a billionaire. Go play with your great grandkids. I don't understand.
I don't understand. And the other funny thing about it, too, is that he was trying so hard for Lachlan to retain control of a company, which I understand that Fox is incredibly profitable. But the funny thing about it is so much of its profit got taken away by paying $787.5 million to Dominion Voting System. They may have another big settlement coming with Smartmatic.
Yeah.
They had to pay tons of money to all of the predatory sexual culture and all the NDAs and all the settlements that they had to do under Roger Ailes. I mean, this is not necessarily a great management of this company. You know what I mean? They are losing a shit ton. Even as they make a shit ton, they are losing a shit ton with this management. Why would you want to just continue that? It needs to be cleaned up. I mean, just from a pure business perspective, but I don't know. I'm not up in the spreadsheets of that business, but it just seems like, just from the news, that's a lot of fucking money to lose.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is also, I will say, one of my by far favorite parts of being a comedian is that people just want you to have like good opinions or any opinion about anything. Like, who would have ever guessed that me, a complete buffoon who literally knows nothing, would be asked this morning whether I believe it's the correct adjudication of probate law? Like, if you are taking my advice on probate law, you have big problems. You need to find a really good lawyer right now, probably a criminal defense lawyer, because you are in deep trouble if you want to know what Chris Duffy thinks about your probate decision.
Oh, and that, folks, is the premise of Fake the Nation.
The premise of Fake the Nation. You better get a lawyer. You are in too deep.
There's always at least two people, I include myself, who don't necessarily know what they're talking about.
Thank you. I'm honored to be included in the two.
All right. That, my friends, is the end of the show. And what a fun show it was. I loved speaking with you both. And what I would love is for the people of Fake Nation to be able to follow you and all the wonderful things that you do. SE Cupp, where do they do that?
Well, you can see me on CNN. But also I'm on Instagram at SE Cupp, Twitter at SE Cupp, Blue Sky at SE Cupp. And please listen to my podcast, Off the Cup. It's a fun antidote to everything that's going on.
Guys, I co-sign on that because I'm a new subscriber to that podcast. It's super fun. Yay. And Essie is just smart and great, and you should absolutely be immediately subscribing. It's a perfect companion to Fake the Nation.
Yeah.
And Chris Duffy, where do they find you?
You can find all my stuff at chrisduffycomedy.com or on any of the social platforms. I'm at Chris, the letter I, Duffy. That's it. I don't know why I said it as though there was more to come, but that's the whole thing.
And guys, you can check out some of the Wrong Answers Only show online. There's some videos. If you're not in a town that they're performing live, it's so fun. And Chris just has like a natural ability with taking really hardcore, difficult topics like in the science community and just making them hilarious. So
thank you.
It is a gift. And you know where to find me and all the things that I do. I have some gigs coming up in January, but we'll just deal with those later. You know what I mean?
Never heard more relatable promotion in my entire career.
Great plug.
That is how I feel every time I'm asked to promote something.
I'll talk about it later.
That can come.
What I do want you to do, because it's just a fun and good time, is listen to the Godfather recaps and tell all your movie friends about the Godfather recaps. And otherwise, I want to thank everyone who makes the show a possibility. That's our wonderful producer, Andrew McGuire. Thanks to everyone at HeadGum. Thanks to Gaby Alter for our theme music. If you have any questions, ideas, you can email us at fakethenationpodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget patreon.com/Negin Farsad to support the show. And otherwise, we'll be back in your earballs next week.
That was a HeadGum podcast.